This deep dive, it centers around a story that's both really personal and incredibly difficult to hear.
Hmm.
We're headed to Ciudad Juarez, Mexico, to delve into the disappearance of Esmeralda Castillo Rincon,
Right.
a 14-year-old girl who vanished in 2009.
Yeah.
Esmeralda's story, as you'll soon discover, isn't just a missing person case.
Right.
It's a chilling reflection of the complex web of violence, corruption, and silence that plagues many parts of Mexico.
What's particularly poignant about Esmeralda's case is that it throws light on a tragic reality. Young women like Esmeralda often become victims. Their stories overshadowed by a system that sometimes seems designed to silence them.
It's heartbreaking. Before we go any further, can you paint a picture of Esmeralda for our listener? What was she like before her life was tragically upended?
Imagine a bright, ambitious 14-year-old on the cusp of womanhood. Esmeralda was about to celebrate her quinceañera, a milestone deeply ingrained in Mexican culture, marking the transition from girlhood to womanhood. To have that moment, that future ripped away, it's a loss that echoes on so many levels.
And this wasn't just any ordinary town she was living in. Ciudad Juarez in 2009 was already notorious for drug cartel violence, wasn't it?
Oh yeah,
The military presence alone must have created an atmosphere of tension and fear.
absolutely. Imagine a city where danger lurks around every corner, where
Hmm.
trust in authority is fractured, and where the threat of violence is a constant undercurrent. That was the reality for families in Ciudad Juarez. Esmeralda's disappearance, in a place already grappling with so much darkness, sent shockwaves through the community.
So walk us through the day she disappeared. What do we know about her last known steps?
It was May 19th, 2009. A seemingly ordinary day. Esmeralda was simply heading to school, boarding the same public bus she always did. It's this chilling ordinariness that makes her disappearance all the more unsettling.
And just like that, she was gone.
Gone. Vanished into thin air, no trace. Just that haunting question. Where is Esmeralda?
You mentioned the family. Tell me about them. Who were they before their lives were consumed by this search for answers?
Esmeralda's family were hardworking, humble people just trying to make ends meet in a city riddled with challenges. Her father, Jose Luis, was a street painter, and her mother, Marta, also held a job. They were doing their best to provide for their family. When Esmeralda vanished, they were absolutely devastated, their world collapsing around them, but they refused to just sit back and passively wait for answers.
That's where their incredible and frankly awe-inspiring determination kicks in. Tell me about their grassroots efforts to find Esmeralda.
Out of sheer desperation, fueled by the lack of progress in the official investigation, they began selling hamburgers to finance their own search. Think about that for a moment. They were thrust into a parent's worst nightmare and then forced to take matters into their own hands, sacrificing everything to find their daughter.
And this is where the story takes that first unexpected and deeply unsettling turn, isn't it?
Yeah.
Tell me about Jose Luis's arrest.
This is where Esmeralda's story transcends a personal tragedy and morphs into something much larger, more indicative of systemic issues. In 2012, 3 years after Esmeralda's disappearance, Jose Luis and his son, Lorenzo, were abruptly arrested.
Arrested? What were they accused of?
Robbery. They were accused of robbing a massage parlor.
Hold on a second. This seems incredibly convenient, almost too convenient. What do you make of this timing? Wasn't this years after the alleged robbery supposedly took place?
The timing is incredibly suspect, especially considering the accusation stemmed from an alleged incident that occurred in 2008, a full year before Esmeralda vanished. The family vehemently maintained that the charges were fabricated, a blatant attempt to silence Jose Luis, who had become an outspoken critic of the government's handling of Esmeralda's case.
So not only was he a father desperately seeking his daughter, but he was also becoming a potential threat, a thorn in the side of the authorities.
Precisely. This situation draws a stark and troubling parallel to the dangers faced by activists and citizens who dare to challenge those in power, particularly in regions like Ciudad Juarez. It speaks to a culture of impunity, where speaking truth to power can have perilous consequences.
So let me get this straight. Jose Luis, a father tirelessly searching for his missing daughter, is suddenly arrested on charges that seem, at best, flimsy and at worst, a deliberate attempt to silence him. This must have sent ripples through the community and beyond.
Absolutely. Human rights groups immediately rallied behind Jose Luis and his family. Protests erupted, media coverage intensified, and the case quickly gained national attention, shining a harsh light on the alleged corruption within the justice system in Ciudad Juarez.
How did the authorities react to this wave of scrutiny and pressure?
Instead of addressing the concerns raised, they doubled down, denying any wrongdoing and insisting they had a strong case against Jose Luis and Lorenzo. However, in a surprising turn of events, After 8 grueling months behind bars,
They were released.
yes, the charges were dropped. Just like that. There was no clear explanation, no apology, no accountability. Jose Luis, though, remained steadfast in his belief that it was the mounting pressure, the inability to silence him completely, that led to their release.
Even if the release itself brought some relief, imagine the emotional toll of those 8 months, the anguish of being torn away from the search for Esmeralda, the injustice of it all.
Absolutely. It's impossible to quantify the impact this had on them. The precious time stolen from a search that already felt like a race against the clock.
So we're left with a family still desperately seeking answers, a father unjustly imprisoned and released, and authorities seemingly more interested in protecting their image than finding a missing girl. What happens next in Esmeralda's story?
The narrative takes another unexpected turn in 2015. Remember, by this point, the official investigation into Esmeralda's disappearance had been closed for almost a year. They had officially classified it as a femicide, a term that sends chills down your spine. Essentially, they believe she was dead, even though her body was never found.
That's a tough pill to swallow for any family. To have your loved one declared dead without any physical evidence, without that closure, however painful it might be.
It's unimaginable. But then, out of the blue, they announced a supposed break in the case.
Okay, at this point, I'm almost afraid to ask, what kind of break?
They claimed to have found a bone, a tibia to be specific, which they asserted belonged to Esmeralda.
A single bone, years after she vanished, after they'd already closed the case. And that's what they considered a breakthrough.
That's the most baffling part. The timing was incredibly suspicious, to say the least, as if they were trying to quickly close a chapter that was becoming increasingly uncomfortable. But it gets even more convoluted.
How so?
This supposedly crucial piece of evidence, this single bone that was supposed to provide answers, had actually been in their possession since 2013. They sat on it for 2 years.
I can't even begin to fathom the cruelty of that. To withhold that information, that supposed sliver of evidence, for years from a family desperate for any shred of hope. What possible justification could they have for that?
They remained frustratingly tight-lipped about the whole ordeal. However, the pressure mounted, particularly from the media, for the family to accept this bone as closure, to finally let Esmeralda rest.
To simply accept this incredibly convenient discovery at face value, after years of dead ends and what seemed like deliberate attempts to obstruct their search.
Exactly. But Jose Luis and Marta remained unconvinced, rightfully skeptical. They knew, perhaps better than anyone, how easily evidence could be planted, manipulated, or simply ignored within this system.
Their refusal to blindly accept this speaks volumes about their understanding of the system, the deep-rooted mistrust they had developed.
Precisely. And it wasn't just about the bone itself, was it? It was the utter lack of effort to investigate its origins, how long it had been there, all those crucial details that might have actually led to some semblance of truth. This frustrating lack of transparency, unfortunately, is not unique to Mexico. It points to a chilling global pattern of obfuscation and injustice, particularly in cases of violence against women. There's even a term for it: forced disappearance by concealment of a crime.
That sounds incredibly chilling. Can you elaborate on what that means?
In essence, it's a way to cover up a crime by making it look like a missing persons case, which sadly often receive less attention and resources. It's a way to silence victims, to erase their stories, and to allow perpetrators to act with impunity. Imagine trying to solve a puzzle where someone keeps hiding the pieces, making it nearly impossible to see the full picture. That's what these families are up against.
What happens when you can't even trust the very people tasked with finding your loved one, when every step forward seems to lead to another dead end? What recourse does a family like Esmeralda's have?
In the face of such overwhelming adversity, Jose Luis and Marta made a powerful choice. They transformed their grief, their anger, and their frustration into unwavering advocacy.
So instead of being consumed by the darkness, they chose to become a beacon of light for others.
Precisely. They refused to allow Esmeralda's story to be silenced. They organized annual events in her memory, held rallies, and relentlessly demanded meetings with anyone who would listen. Jose Luis, in particular, became a powerful symbol of a father's unwavering love and his refusal to let his daughter be forgotten.
It's incredibly inspiring to hear about their resilience, their refusal to be silenced. Can you tell us more about their advocacy work, about the impact they've had?
They understood that Esmeralda's case was tragically not an isolated incident. It was emblematic of a much larger, more systemic problem. They wanted to raise awareness not just for Esmeralda, but for all the families who'd been ignored, silenced, and forgotten.
Their story is both heartbreaking and inspiring. It makes you wonder, how far would you go for your child? What sacrifices would you make to ensure their story is heard? But what about the authorities? Did their pleas fall on deaf ears?
They refused to be ignored. There were even instances where Jose Luis directly confronted politicians, demanding accountability and action.
Are we talking about any politicians in particular?
One in particular stands out. During a visit to Ciudad Juarez, Jose Luis managed to get on stage with President Andres Manuel Lopez Obrador himself.
Wow, talk about a father's unwavering determination.
It was a powerful moment. He directly addressed the president, pleading for him to reopen the investigation into Esmeralda's disappearance. This act of courage, this refusal to be silenced, resonated deeply with many. It highlighted the deep mistrust that many harbored towards the authorities and the systemic issues that allowed these disappearances to continue unabated.
It's moments like these when I'm reminded of the incredible strength and resilience of the human spirit, to confront those in power, to demand justice when all hope seems lost. It's both humbling and inspiring.
It really makes you question what you would do if you were in their shoes. To keep fighting, fueled by love and a sliver of hope even when facing indifference and hostility.
Yeah.
It's a testament to the depth of a parent's love.
Their story, while specific to Esmeralda, feels tragically universal. The frustration, the agony of not knowing, the feeling of being trapped in a system that seems designed to silence and disempower. It resonates with anyone who's ever felt unheard, unseen.
You've hit upon a crucial point. Esmeralda's story, while deeply personal, also exposes larger systemic issues, the vulnerability of young women, the culture of impunity surrounding these crimes, and the agonizingly slow grind of justice.
It feels like the weight of so many stories rests on Esmeralda's disappearance. It's as if her case has become a symbol for countless others lost in the shadows.
That's a powerful way to put it. It's about ensuring that these women, these daughters, these mothers, these sisters, aren't just statistics, aren't just forgotten names in a long, tragic list.
Speaking of which, have there been any recent developments in Esmeralda's case? Have the authorities responded to the family's pleas?
Sadly, there hasn't been much progress. The family recently met with the prosecutor's office, hoping for answers, for some sign that Esmeralda's case hadn't been forgotten.
Yeah.
They were met with the same bureaucratic walls, the same frustrating lack of progress. Can you imagine, after all these years, still being told to accept her death, to move on when they haven't even found her remains?
It's as if the very act of seeking answers, of demanding accountability, is seen as an inconvenience, an annoyance.
It's a heartbreaking reality, and it underscores a chilling pattern, particularly in Ciudad Juarez and other border towns in Mexico, where violence against women, especially young women, is a tragic epidemic.
So, where do we go from here? What can our listener take away from this story, this deep dive into the heart of a broken system?
I think it's the importance of remembering. The power of keeping Esmeralda's story alive, of amplifying the voices of those who refuse to be silenced. Because memory can be a form of resistance. It can be a catalyst for change.
It's about refusing to let indifference win. Because when we remember, when we bear witness, we honor the victims, we support those who grieve, and we say, this is not okay. This cannot continue.
Exactly. Esmeralda's story is a stark reminder that justice delayed is often justice denied. It's a call to action, a plea to shed light on the dark corners where injustice thrives, and to fight for a world where stories like Esmeralda's are no longer imaginable.
And that's where our deep dive ends. Not with a period, but with a call to action, an invitation for you to learn more, to engage, and to lend your voice to the chorus demanding justice for Esmeralda and for all those whose stories remain untold.